of my problems when I'm playing role-playing games is that I always feel like I'm not playing it right, like I'm doing something wrong, that I'm not getting the right experience out of the game. This is why I kind of like to play through them with guides so I know what I'm doing, which is what I ended up doing with Final Fantasy Tactics, which was quite a good way of doing it because I played it on the PSP. The PSP War of the Lions was the version I had. I guess it was like early days of being able to connect stuff to the internet. I could actually go on to Game FAQs, download a guide, and save that to my PSP, so I could just like hop out, check a guide, hop back into the game. It made it much more fun to play, and I played through pretty much all of the game and had a rare old time with it. Remember this time mainly playing it at work, either in the toilet at a break. I wouldn't go, away from my desk during the day to play it, or wherever in the office, maybe playing a bit on the commute back to the office. And the engine, the kind of game strategy RPG-ness of it was well fun, and being able to have someone kind of hold my hand and kind of go through like, right, if you do this, train your character as this, and do this, by the time you finish you'll have a character who can punch people twice and kill them in pretty much one hit, which was I did with my character. I think it's train him up as a ninja and then a monk, and you just rock up and just smash dudes in the face with 2 hits and just take out most people. But yeah, it's that's the rub of the game, is figuring out the job system and what you can do to break it and push it in different places where they didn't quite expect it when they were making a game, to kind of get the kind of weird combos. But the storyline was whatever, but it looked great on the PSP. The graphics were kind of nicely sized for it, but that kind of the core of it, the grinding out things to kind of make your character a certain way, was even with having my handheld with a guide, was still really fun and still really enjoyable. And yeah, it's probably one of the reasons why to this day I keep thinking, right, I want to do a strategy role-playing game, because I kind of want to get back to how fun it was playing Final Fantasy Tactics. I'll get there one day. Keep trying. But this was brilliant, and I had a great time with my band of dudes going around stabbing and punching folk. Obviously the 80s and 90s were a great era, not just video games but for cartoons. Not just the initial kind of Transformers toy-based shows, but the kind of ones that followed afterwards. Once Disney started making shows with first with DuckTales and then Rescue Rangers, that sort of thing. The kind of not toy-based shows, but still kind of good cartoon shows in their own right. One of which was Darkwing Duck. And of course, to fold all this back into video games, a lot of those shows got made into games by Capcom, and that period of games is quite fondly remembered. Capcom had a great run of doing games that time. DuckTales, I think, is the one people always remember on the NES. But I had Darkwing Duck on the Game Boy, and even there it was still an absolute hoot. Kind of taking, I suppose, the kind of Mega Man template of you've got kind of 3 or 4 levels, pick one, go through it, next one, that sort of thing. But the core platforming side of things was just, it was polished to a degree, and Darkwing Duck was fantastic, kind of going around, being able to use his different weapons. I think you could deflect things with his cloak. It's one of the Game Boy games I actually completed because it was so fun. Even on the small screen, the graphics looked brilliant. The kind of chunky sprites and everything was kind of nice and recognisable. Music was alright as well, even with the Game Boy speaker. So yeah, it's probably like one of the secret best Capcom Disney games. It was doesn't get talked about as much as DuckTales, but it was brilliant. Absolutely enjoyed it. It seems like, even though it took a while for the genre to come along, video games are built for 2 dudes beating each other up. Or in this case, 3 dudes beating each other up. This being International Karate Plus, or IQ Plus, if you want to be brusque. This is on the Amiga and other consoles. I think it might have been out on the C64 and stuff. It probably takes inspiration from Karate Champ, the kind of early one-on-one fighting games, where you just kind of 3 dudes just having a kung fu fight, no kind of big story to it. You just in your gis beating crap out of each other. And this one used the kind of different kind of control style. You had the stick and moving it in different areas to do different moves. I think up towards would be like a jump, but if you held fire and push up towards, it'd be like an axe kick. or a split kick. You know, you'd have all these kind of different moves available to you, turn punches, sweeps. It was quite the complex little thing. I remember writing all the moves down. I think on the title screen at some point it showed you like all the moves you could do. I remember waiting for that to come around and just scribbling onto paper so I kind of knew what everything was, because it was a tricky game to play. Actually, you know, like with most of these things, it was quite easy just to waggle the stick and do damage, but if you want to be really good at it, you have to practice and remember, you know, use actual skill in playing it. Bonus stages were a bit annoying, the kind of bouncing heads and having to kick bombs away, but you know, getting people together, you know, once you kind of got it right and you could backflip over to the other level and then, you know, heel kick some dude in the face to win. You know, even now I think there's few fighting games that feel like, you know, once you kind of get to that skill level, it's a shiny gem of a game. Absolutely brilliant. Now, Worms has been around for the longest time. I think the first one, I think I played it on the PC, had it for the Sega Saturn, and that was fun. But then Worms Armageddon was the one that I really kind of had for a long time and really thoroughly enjoyed. This was a kind of 2000s PC version. I think it was the first one they where they upgraded the graphics. Initially, you know, the first few games were like really kind of small pixel kind of based characters, more like kind of Lemmings, I guess, would be the kind of direct inspiration for how the game looked. You know, small sprites, small number of characters, but bags of character in them. And this kind of opened it up into kind of a more cartoony, high-res 2D kind of style, but still kept all that initial gameplay, like all the kind of how the kind of original game felt was all kind of moved forward into this engine, and it was brilliant. You know, the upgraded graphics made the weapons look even better. You know, the super sheep was fantastic. Holy hand grenade, all that kind of stuff, banana bombs, looked brilliant. And yeah, so just making your team of worms and playing was fantastic. And obviously, this being the early 2000s, there was like an early online mode, so you could go on and play with other people. Some people were too good; they were just ninjas with ropes, and it was ridiculously hard. But having a big old, you know, team mode was really fun. Of course, the problem there is Worms plays best with people in the same room as you, so you can see their face when you kind of nail that bazooka shot to the side of the level. But even so, either playing by yourself or online, this was probably like a high point of the series for me, and I'm not sure if it was ever quite able to get back out as maybe some of the recent ones, the very recent ones, possibly, but this was one of my absolute favourites, probably my favourite game of the series. So Worms Armageddon, big tick for me.
Oh.
Back to the arcade now with what is a legendary big beefy cab, Gauntlet, the original 4-player game. Well, I don't know if that's true or not. I'm just kind of saying it for the just to be over the topness, to be honest. Based on the kind of Dungeons and Dragons world, so you're like a barbarian, a wizard, an Amazon, an elf is the other one, and yeah, you're kind of barreling through dungeons, collecting treasure, killing lots of bad guys, trying to get to the exit, and yeah, it was real fun. It was a really fun arcade game. You know, having it speak to you, you know, barbarian eats health or whatever it said was great. And playing it with more than one person made it even better, because you know things are better with other people. And I'm not sure I did ever play it with 4 of us. Definitely played it with at least as a 2-player game, and being able to kind of, you know, talk through stuff and sort out a strategy on the fly and figure out, right, you need to kill that that monster factory right now, otherwise we're in trouble, and kind of building through it that way was great. It was a fantastic arcade game, great social arcade game, which it's come back on. I think there's been a few good home conversions. I think there was a Gauntlet on the Mega Drive that was pretty good. I want to say there was one on the GameCube that I had fun with. I don't think it was a great game, but this original one, that kind of distillation of the idea, the kind of initial version of the idea with that cabinet, yeah, it still ranks as one of my favourite arcade experiences. For a long time, I felt like the Game Boy was like my main gaming machine. I had an Amiga, but I think it's hard to say because I played lots of games on my Amiga, but my Game Boy, it was special having that machine at the time. And I remember coming home, borrowing the Link's Awakening of someone from school, go upstairs to my room, just lie in my bed and just playing it for what felt like hours, just disappearing into this world. This was the first Zelda game I played. Didn't have a NES, so never played it on there. Didn't have a SNES, didn't play it on there. So this was my entry into the series, and I suppose I couldn't have picked a much better one because it's brilliant. It's a Zelda game, on the Game Boy, which sounds like a really tough thing to do because Zelda games tends to be kind of big expansive games, whereas this is stuck on a small black and white handheld. But it's amazing. Again, it takes the SNES Zelda Link to the Past and kind of distills it down onto a Game Boy, and the story's great. The kind of dungeons you go on are great, and I think I smashed through it and completed it in a couple of weeks. It was brilliant. You can obviously recommend the Switch one. That's good. But the magic of playing the original one, can't be denied for me. It kind of lives on that system and at that time. And yeah, Game Boy Zelda. Who would have thought it? Who would have thought it'd be this good? What a brilliant game. Now, when I first had like an iPhone and an iPad, the games on it weren't exactly, world beaters. I think they were quite simple, kind of, little distractions more than anything else. Little kind of puzzle games, little kind of just games that were just kind of, you could just idle away time with, Bejeweled or whatever, that sort of thing, that sort of match 3 puzzle kind of game. Then you get something like Super Brothers Sword and Sorcery, and you kind of realise that holy crap, games are an amazing medium. The aesthetic of the game was fantastic, the kind of pixel art style, wrapped up with a great soundtrack and a really kind of compelling, I suppose now you look back and say it's kind of Dark Soulsy, and that its biggest influence at the time would have been Shadow of the Colossus, that kind of, not really explaining the story to you, just having to kind of pick it up and infer things by the text and what characters are doing. And it was brilliant. It was an absolutely wonderful experience playing through that game for the first time. The battle system's kind of like Punch-Out kind of style. Having to kind of flip the device you're using to kind of get in and out of it was brilliant. And I think it stands as like one of those games that kind of just first kind of proved, the iPad, the iOS, whatever, it can be as good as you want it to be. It can stand up to any kind of type of game you want to do on it, because at the end of the day, it's still video games, and video games can be amazing, and this is one of those games that kind of proves, no matter what system or what kind of device you put them onto, video games can still find greatness. And this was probably one of the first great iPad games, and probably still my favourite iPad game. Certainly in the top 3 iPad games, even though it's number 34 on the list, it's still a brilliant experience. Well, it's got to be on here somewhere, hasn't it? It's Tetris. You know what I mean? It's Tetris. It's been around, not since games began, but it's been around for a hell of a long time. I've stuck the Game Boy version on here because that was the one that really first entranced me. I think that's the one that attracts everybody. It had been around beforehand, on computers or whatever, but sticking it in the box of the Game Boy was such a genius move that it's kind of probably firmly imprinted this game onto the consciousness of video games, if not the world, pretty much ever since. The music is insanely catchy. It fits the system perfectly. The way it plays and the pick up and put downness of it. That's a terrible phrase, turn a phrase, but I'm sticking with it. It was a game that seemed, custom designed for the Game Boy, despite the fact that it had been around in the systems for a while beforehand. It was brilliant. You could pick any version of Tetris pretty much, and they're all really good. Tetris 99 is a great version of it. Tetris, whatever the VR one and the Tetris Effect, that's a cracking one as well. But sometimes you've got to go with your first love, and this was the first version of Tetris I loved, and it was brilliant, and it was a definitive puzzle game. It was hard being a Saturn owner because you kind of knew that it was out there to die. It was pretty obvious pretty quick that it was going to die on its ass pretty quick. As soon as you saw that kind of first batch of PS1 games, you were like, oh, the graphics are better, and oh dear. But that still doesn't stop the Saturn being a powerhouse, and it got a really good version of Sega Rally, which seems insane considering, in the arcades it's this kind of big screen behemoth, big steering wheel, fantastic looking graphics, and here I am playing it on the sofa on the Saturn. Yeah, the graphics aren't as good as the arcade, but again, it's capturing that spark of greatness from the arcade machine and being able to distill it down into a console. That was, one of Sega's great tricks. They didn't always get it right with their arcade conversions. This is when they got it spot on. And flying around the track, throwing your cars in the corners, the kind of feel of the car as it slid around on the dirt and everything was absolutely brilliant. They kind of really captured that. Where the conversion of Daytona failed to kind of capture the spark of that arcade machine, they got it completely right with this one. And they ended up producing one of the best racing games for the machine. Yeah, it's a bit short because it's probably still firmly in the arcade mold, but it's undeniably fun. It's undeniably a great experience. Those arcade machines were designed to be a great experience, and even without the kind of the extra paraphernalia of the arcade cabinet, the kind of core of it is still a great experience, and they translate that perfectly onto the Sega Saturn. Much inferior hardware, but yeah, still had the magic. Sega Rally still had the magic in the home, and it was a really fun, really good racing game. Now, when I was recording the footage for this, I found this game really hard to go back to, incredibly hard, because since GoldenEye came out, we've had other games, other first-person shooter games come out that kind of redefined and set how first-person shooters work. I think Halo is probably the one. I was like, right, this is how a first-person shooter on a console works. Twin sticks, this is how you do it, sort of thing. To kind of go back to GoldenEye, not the first-person shooter on a console, but the first one to be successful and to kind of show that it can definitely be done. It's really hard to play. I think you probably need to play around the controls a bit to get it working as like modern day, but at the time, I'm going to say that at the time, there was not much else like it. Being Bond and kind of going around sniping dudes, shooting people left, right and centre was fantastic. Being able to play it with 2 control pads like I did once, you kind of dual wield control pads, that was fantastic. The multiplayer mode was a bit janky because it was kind of cut down into the quarters, but it was still brilliant. Going around as our job or whatever. Golden gun mode, kind of get people, pals from school come back to my house after school, or during school. It was a free period for sixth form. It was amazing. Those kind of multiplayer games were so much fun. Yeah, so the game can't hold up to today's standards because things have moved on so differently. But the things that it did kind of prove that yes, we can do this genre on consoles. It is possible. Can't be denied. And the fun times I remember for this game can't be denied either. It's you really need to play it with a proper control pad to kind of get your head back into that space. I think I was trying to force it through on a regular control pad and it just didn't feel right. So I think if you go back to the original hardware, playing it makes more sense because it was designed around that control pad. It's again one of those games that kind of really kind of molds itself onto its system. But yeah, being Bond, being able to kind of go around those levels and think, my god, look at these graphics, I can do it on a big fancy PC and on a big console in my house. Was amazing. So yeah, GoldenEye was an absolutely brilliant game, one that hasn't aged well but is undeniable in what it achieved both for first person shooters and the hardware itself.